I never thought I'd end up in a federal courtroom in downtown Chicago, listening to my husband of 12 years brag about how he'd bleed me dry before the ink on our divorce papers was even dry. But there I was, on that sweltering July afternoon, the air thick with the hum of the AC and the faint scent of polished oak, as Victor leaned into the microphone like he owned the damn place. "Your Honor," he said, his voice dripping with that fake Southern charm he'd picked up from too many bourbon nights in Nashville boardrooms. "Everly's fortune? It's community property. Half of it's mine by right. I'll be sipping pina coladas in the Caymans while she scrambles to rebuild." The gallery murmured, some gasps, a few chuckles from his sleazy lawyer's side, and I felt my nails dig into my palms, drawing tiny crescents of blood that nobody could see. What Victor didn't know, what he'd never seen coming, was the envelope I'd slid across the bench just minutes before, a ticking bomb wrapped in legal wax, sealed with the truth he'd buried deeper than Jimmy Hoffa's bones. It started 12 years ago, back when I was just Everly Kane, a scrappy coder fresh out of MIT with a laptop full of dreams and a student loan balance that could choke a horse. Chicago was my proving ground, a city of Rust Belt grit and glass tower ambition, where winters bit like a junkyard dog and summers turned the loop into a pressure cooker of cutthroat deals. I'd bootstrapped my way into a tech startup, hacking together an AI algorithm that predicted market fluctuations better than any Wall Street suit with a crystal ball. We called it PredictX, and by year 3, it was valued at $50 million. Investors swarmed like flies to honey, venture capitalists from Sand Hill Road, hedge fund vultures from New York, even a whisper from Silicon Valley royalty. But I didn't sell. Not yet. I wanted to build something real, something that put Midwestern steel into the veins of American innovation. That's when Victor slithered into my life. He was a lobbyist, the kind who greased palms in Springfield and D.C., with equal parts charm and cash, representing big pharma and energy giants who dreamed of deregulation. We met at a rooftop mixer in the West Loop, the kind where craft cocktails flowed and egos clashed like cymbals. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with that easy grin that said he knew exactly how to close a deal or a woman. "Everly Kane," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "I've read about PredictX. You're the next Elizabeth Holmes, minus the fraud." I laughed, because back then, I thought it was a compliment. We talked for hours about algorithms and ethics, about how tech could upend the old guard if only the suits would get out of the way. By dawn, we were tangled in my loft sheets, and 6 months later, we were married in a no-fuss ceremony at City Hall, witnessed by a hungover best man and a clerk who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Victor was my anchor in those early days. While I burned the midnight oil debugging code and courting clients, he handled the schmoozing, the dinners at Gibson's Steakhouse, the schlep to D.C. for congressional briefings on AI ethics. "Let me carry the load off your plate, babe," he'd say, kissing my forehead as I stared at spreadsheets until my eyes crossed. And God, it worked. PredictX exploded. We moved to a penthouse in Streeterville overlooking Lake Michigan, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel like you owned the horizon. I hired a team, diverse, hungry kids from state schools and HBCUs, the underdogs who'd never get a shot in Palo Alto. Victor? He became my unofficial COO, whispering in investors' ears, smoothing over regulatory hurdles with his Rolodex of influence peddlers. But cracks showed early, if I'd bothered to look. Little things, Victor's late nights networking, the way he dodged questions about his clients, the sudden influx of cash into our joint account that he waved off as bonuses. I was too busy building an empire to notice. By year 5, PredictX was a unicorn, and I was on the cover of Forbes as the Queen of Midwest Tech. Victor beamed in the photo shoot, his arm around my waist like a possessive python. "We're unstoppable," he'd toast at parties, his eyes gleaming with something I mistook for pride. Pride, not possession. The betrayal hit like a freight train from the Union Pacific yards. It was a Tuesday in March, gray skies spitting sleet over the magnificent mile, when the FBI knocked on our door. Agents in cheap suits, badges flashing like bad omens, hauling boxes of files stamped classified. They weren't there for me, at first. No. They wanted Victor. Embezzlement, they said. Wire fraud. Siphoning off PredictX funds through shell companies tied to his lobbying gigs. Millions. Funneled to offshore accounts in the Caymans. Laundered through crypto wallets that even I, with all my algorithms, hadn't sniffed out. I stood in our kitchen, marble counters cold under my hands, as Victor paced like a caged wolf. "Everly, listen, it's a misunderstanding. Political enemies. You know how it is." But his voice cracked, and I saw it then, the lie in his eyes. The same one he'd fed me on our wedding night when he promised forever. The agents showed me the paper trail, emails from his private server. Transfers signed with my forged e-signature. They'd pinned it on me. 2. MS. Kane, the lead agent said, a no-nonsense woman from Milwaukee with a buzz cut and a stare that could curdle milk. "Your company's at the center. We need your cooperation." Cooperation. That's what they called it when I perjured myself on the stand 3 months later, in a sealed federal courtroom down in the Dirksen building. Victor's lawyers, shark tanks from Kirkland and Ellis, had spun a tale of marital collusion, painting me as the mastermind. "She's the tech whiz," they'd argue. He was just the husband. To save PredictX. To save us. I took the fall. Pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, accessory after the fact. Community service. A $2 million fine from my own pocket. And a 5-year probation that chained me to Chicago like an ankle monitor. Victor walked. No charges, no cuffs. "For better or worse," he whispered as the gavel fell, squeezing my hand under the table. I believed him. God help me. I did. For 2 years after, I rebuilt in the shadows. PredictX rebranded as EverTech, shedding the stink of scandal like a snake moleskin. I coded through the nights, therapy sessions by day, telling myself it was worth it for the man I loved. Victor? He thrived. Got a cushy gig consulting for a DC think tank, jetting off to Mar-a-Lago fundraisers and Davos schmoozes. Our marriage became a ghost, sexless dinners. His affairs whispered about in society pages, a senator's daughter here, a lobbyist's wife there. But I stayed. Because love's a blindfold, and mine was triple-stitched. Then, last Christmas Eve, I found the letter, tucked in his briefcase, half buried under cufflinks and cocktail napkins, a pink carbon copy from a Bahamian law firm, dated the week of my plea deal. Dear Mr. Hargrove. It read, Victor Hargrove. My Victor. Confirmation of asset transfer. $18.4 million to Trust VH. 47. Irrevocable. Beneficiary. Victor Hargrove Soul. Below. A notary's seal and my signature. Not forged this time. Real. I'd signed it in a haze of painkillers after a migraine he'd insisted was stress. During one of his business trips. He'd drugged me. Everly. slipped something in my wine to make me pliable, then had me ink away half my empire while I babbled about loving him forever. The world tilted. I sat on the floor of our walk-in closet, snow falling soft outside the windows, and laughed, a hollow, jagged sound that echoed off the fur coats. Betrayal? This was annihilation. He'd used me, framed me, stolen from me, and worst of all, made me complicit in my own destruction. The man who'd vowed to protect me had carved out my heart with a dull knife and sold it on the black market. That night, as he stumbled in reeking of scotch and someone else's perfume, I smiled over eggnog and said nothing. Revenge isn't served hot, darling. It's a slow roast. The next morning, I called my lawyer, a pitbull named Rosa from Southside, who'd clawed her way through law school on scholarships and spite. Divorce him, I said, voice steady as Lake Michigan ice. And bury him. Rosa didn't blink. We filed the papers quietly, citing irreconcilable differences to keep the sharks at bay. But behind the scenes, I unleashed the hounds. Hired a PI firm out of Detroit, ex-cops with grudges against the system, to dig into Victor's dirt. They came back with gold, audio tapes of him bragging to mistresses about the little wifey who took the heat, bank records linking him to a Ponzi scheme targeting retiree pensions, even photos of him cozying up to a cartel fixer in Miami. But the crown jewel? A whistleblower from his old lobbying firm, a junior aide named Tommy who'd been canned for asking too many questions. Tommy had the emails, Victor's direct orders to fabricate the fraud trail.
Pointing fingers at me.
I compiled it all into that envelope, 200 pages of affidavits, timestamps, and irrefutable proof. Not just of theft, but of perjury, coercion, even hints of domestic abuse veiled as marital stress, enough to torch his career, freeze his assets, and land him in Supermax if the feds bit. But I held it close, parceled it out like breadcrumbs. Leaked a tip to the Sun-Times about anonymous sources in Victor's orbit. Watched his stock plummet as whispers turned to headlines. Lobbyist linked to scandal. Wife's fortune in jeopardy. He panicked. Of course. Started calling, begging for reconciliation over candlelit dinners at RPM Italian. Everly, baby, it's the pressure. We can fix this. I played along, letting him think he had me on the hook, while Rosa filed motions to seal the divorce proceedings. Contested assets. Full forensic accounting. By spring, the courtroom was set. Judge Harlan, a no-bullshit veteran from the 80s crack epidemic trials, presiding over what Victor thought was his victory lap. As the hearing date loomed, tension coiled in my gut like a spring under too much torque. I'd lost weight, cheeks hollow, suits hanging loose, but my resolve? Diamond hard. Friends, real ones, the coders who'd stuck by me, warned me off. He's poison.
Ev.
Walk away clean. But clean wasn't an option. Victor had poisoned the well. Now it was time to drain it dry. I rehearsed in the mirror, calm, collected. The Everly who'd built an empire from scratch. Not the broken woman he'd molded. The night before, I poured his scotch down the sink, burned his love letters in the fireplace, and slept like a baby for the first time in years. Walking into that courtroom felt like stepping into a coliseum. Gladiators and lions trading places. The gallery buzzed, reporters from Cranes, a few tabloid hacks, even a blogger from some revenge porn subreddit masquerading as true crime. Victor sat across the aisle, dapper in a Brioni suit. His lawyer, that weasel-faced prick from WilmerHale, whispering like a devil on his shoulder. He caught my eye and winked. the bastard. As if this were foreplay. Judge Harlan entered to the bailiff's bark, her robes swishing like a warning flag. Gavel down. Proceedings begin. Mr. Hargrove, she said, peering over her glasses at Victor's petition. You seek equitable distribution of marital assets, including 50% of Evertech Holdings. Victor nodded, launching into his soliloquy, the one about shared sacrifices. My erratic behavior post-scandal. How he'd stood by me through the rough patch. Lies layered like onion skin, each one stinging my eyes. His lawyer piled on, exhibits of joint tax returns, photos from our wedding, even a forged love note I'd supposedly written last month. The judge listened, stone-faced, as Victor rapped with his boast, the Caymans, the pina coladas, living large off my dime. Laughter rippled from his side. My heart hammered, but I kept my face blank. A poker pro at the Commerce Casino. Then it was my turn. Rosa rose, smooth as silk. Your Honor, MS. Kane contests all claims. But before we proceed to discovery, she has a sealed exhibit for your review. I slid the envelope across the polished bench, my fingers brushing the wood like a caress. Judge Harlan took it, her eyes narrowing at the DOJ stamp Rosa had procured, enough to lend it gravitas without spilling the beans. Counsel, she asked, glancing between us. Victor's lawyer scoffed. Objection. Your Honor. This is a divorce proceeding, not a criminal sideshow. Overruled, Harlan snapped. I'll review in chambers. 10-minute recess. The gavel cracked like thunder. Victor shot me a look, confusion laced with fury, as the judge vanished behind her door. The gallery erupted in whispers. What's in the envelope? Tech scandal redux? I met his gaze. Finally, and let a small smile play on my lips. Not triumphant. Vindictive. The kind that says, game's not over.
Vic.
It's just halftime. Those 10 minutes stretched like taffy in hell. I could feel Victor's stare boring into me. A laser of loathing mixed with the dawning fear of a man who's just realized the trapdoor sprung. He leaned over to his lawyer, hissing something that made the weasel blanch. Good. Let him sweat. Rosa patted my knee under the table, her touch grounding me like rebar in concrete. He's done, she murmured. Harlan doesn't play. I nodded. But inside, a storm raged. Part of me, the old Everly, the one who'd once baked him apple pie from Grandma's recipe, ached at the wreckage. We'd built a life.
Damn it.
Laughed at stupid rom-coms. Danced in the kitchen to Springsteen. But that Everly was dead, buried under the weight of his lies. This version? She was forged in fire, ready to burn it all down. The judge returned, envelope in hand, her face a mask of controlled thunder. The gallery hushed as she adjusted her mic. Mr. Hargrove. S. Kane, this court has reviewed the submitted materials. They allege serious misconduct, fraud, coercion, potential federal violations. Murmurs swelled. Victor's lawyer jumped up like he'd sat on a tack. Your Honor, this is prejudicial. We demand a mistrial. Harlan's gavel silenced him. Sit down, counsel, before I hold you in contempt. MS. Kane's exhibit includes affidavits from credible sources, former associates of Mr. Hargrove, detailing a pattern of financial manipulation dating back to 2018. She paused, letting it sink in, her eyes flicking to Victor. He was pale now, that lobbyist tan fading to the color of bad milk. Furthermore, there's evidence of forged documents used to implicate MS. Kane in the prior federal matter. The DOJ has been notified. Proceedings here are suspended pending their investigation. Suspended. It was more than I'd hoped for, a lifeline, a delay that would let the feds swarm Victor like ants on a picnic. But he wasn't going down without a fight. As the courtroom dissolved into chaos, reporters scrambling for quotes, bailiffs herding the crowd, Victor lunged across the aisle, grabbing my arm in a vice that bruised. "What the hell did you do? Everly? You bitch, you set me up." His breath was hot, Scotch soured, his face inches from mine. Security peeled him off, but not before he spat. "You'll regret this." "I'll take everything." I wrenched free, rubbing the red marks blooming on my skin. "You already did."
Vic.
"Now it's payback." Rosa pulled me back as they dragged him toward the exit, his curses echoing off the marble walls. Outside, flashbulbs popped like gunfire. "Everly Kane strikes back," one headline would scream tomorrow. I ducked into a black SUV Rosa had waiting, heart pounding, adrenaline crashing like waves on Navy Pier.
Free.
Finally free. But as the city blurred past, L trains rattling overhead, hot dog vendors hawking under the heat, I felt the hollowness creep in. Revenge tasted like ash. The weeks that followed were a blur of depositions and dodging paparazzi. The feds moved fast, raiding Victor's office in a dawn swoop that made CNN's morning crawl. They seized servers, froze accounts, even impounded his beloved Porsche 911, the one I'd bought him for our 10th anniversary. Tommy, the whistleblower, went public in a tearful interview on WGN, spilling how Victor had groomed him as a fall guy before cutting him loose. "He told me Everly was collateral damage," Tommy said, voice cracking. "Said she was too ambitious for her own good." The internet lit up, Everly revenge trended, with memes of me as a cyber avenger, slaying the patriarchy, and counter-threads calling me a vengeful harpy out to ruin a good man.
Good man.
The words stuck like burrs. Victor, of course, lawyered up harder. A dream team, ex-prosecutors, PR spinners from D.C., even a crisis manager who'd rehabbed a senator's sexting scandal. They countersued defamation, emotional distress, alienation of affection, as if I owed him my soul. In a late-night call that Rosa patched through on speaker, his lead counsel offered a settlement, $10 million and a gag order. "Drop the feds, and Victor walks clean," the voice droned. I laughed, a bark that startled even me. "Tell him to shove it up his ass with the rest of his lies."
Click.
But isolation gnawed. My team at EverTech rallied, late-night pizza runs, group texts with bad puns about Hargrove's hard drive. But the nights? They were mine alone. I'd pace the penthouse. Ghosts in every corner. The dent in the wall from that time we argued over kids. He'd thrown a lamp. I'd cleaned it up. The balcony where he'd proposed, ring glinting under fireworks over the lake. I started therapy again. Not the surface stuff, but deep-dive Jungian shit with a shrink who looked like my aunt from Milwaukee. "Anger is grief's shadow," she'd say. As I unpacked the layers, the father who'd bailed when I was 10, the mentors who dismissed me as that girl coder. Victor hadn't invented my wounds. He'd just salted them. One evening, mid-July, as humidity turned the air to soup, Rosa called with a bombshell. The feds found something else. In Victor's safe, letters. "From you." My stomach dropped. "What letters?" She hesitated. Love letters.
Ev.
Real ones. But dated after the affair rumors.
And.
One mentions the plea deal. You writing how you do it all again for him. I froze. Glass of Malbec halfway to my lips. Memories flooded. The hospital after the migraine. Monitors beeping. Victor at my bedside with that solicitous smile. Sign this.
Babe.
It's just paperwork for the house. I'd been loopy. Trusting. Scribbling words he'd dictated. I'd take the fall 1,000 times for us. Blackmail fodder. Retrofitted as romance. Rage boiled fresh. But so did doubt. Had I been that blind? That weak? The next day, I drove to the old loft in Wicker Park, the one we'd sold but I'd bought back quietly through a shell corp. Standing in the empty space, echoes of laughter mocking me, I made a call. Not to Rosa. To Victor's sister, Lila, a brittle socialite who'd always hated me for stealing her brother. Tell him I'm done playing, I said when she picked up. But if he fights dirty, I release everything. The tapes. The photos. The cartel links. Silence. Then a hiss. You don't know what you're unleashing. Everly.
Click.
Warning shot fired. The Fed's investigation dragged into August. A slow grind of grand jury subpoenas and asset forfeitures. Victor holed up in a condo in Lincoln Park, his social circle evaporating like morning fog. I heard through the grapevine he'd taken to day drinking, ranting to anyone who'd listen about my betrayal. Betrayal. The irony was thicker than deep dish crust. I threw myself into EverTech, launching a new feature, an ethics module for AI, designed to flag coercion in data flows. Poetic justice, coding safeguards against men like him. Revenue spiked, ironic applause from the same VCs who'd once eyed me warily. But Victor wasn't finished scheming. In early September, as leaves turned gold along Lakeshore Drive, his PR machine kicked into overdrive. A tell-all interview dropped on 60 Minutes. Victor, teary-eyed in a cashmere sweater, spinning himself as the victim. Everly's brilliant, but the pressure. It changed her. The scandal broke us. Now she's weaponizing it for revenge. Clips went viral, him choking up over lost years, a photo of us on our honeymoon in the Keys fading to black. Sympathies swelled. Petitions online. Justice for Victor. My mentions flooded with trolls. Gold-digging witch. Feminazi alert. Even some old colleagues distanced themselves, whispering about optics. It stung. Deeper than I'd admit. I holed up, ignoring Rosa's calls to counterpunch. Instead, I dug deeper, had my PI tail his movements. Turns out, Victor was flipping scripts again, meeting with prosecutors, offering dirt on bigger fish, senators, CEOs in exchange for immunity. A rat, turning state's evidence to save his skin.
And the twist?
One meeting was with Harlan's clerk, off books, in a dive bar on Rush Street. Bribery? Coercion? The envelope's contents suddenly felt insufficient. He was gunning for me, aiming to paint the whole thing as my vendetta, a scorned wife's fantasy. That night, rain lashing the windows like accusations, I cracked. Poured a double pour. Scrolled through our old photos, smiling at the Art Institute, arms linked at a Cubs game. What if he was right? What if my revenge was just grief and fangs?
No.
I slammed the glass down, shards scattering like confetti. Dialed Tommy. You in? His voice was steel. All the way. We met at a greasy spoon in Pilsen. Murals of Aztec warriors watching over our booth. Tommy slid a USB drive across the Formica. Victor's insurance file, recordings of him strong-arming underlings, including the aide who'd suicided after a whistleblower tip. Sketchy as hell. Ethically gray. Releasing it could smear innocence, invite lawsuits. But it would gut Victor's narrative. Prove the pattern. Controversial? Hell yes. My decision hung there. A Rubik's Cube of right and wrong. Do I torch the village to save the queen? Or let the snake slither free? I pocketed the drive, paid the bill, and stepped into the storm. Lightning cracked, illuminating the choice. Mercy was for fools.
Victor had taught me that.
As fall deepened, the air crisp with the scent of changing leaves and impending frost, the pressure mounted like a vice on a workbench. The feds circled closer, but Victor's counteroffensive was a blitzkrieg. His team filed a motion to unseal the divorce, arguing my envelope was a smear campaign funded by Evertech slush funds. Tabloids ate it up. Tech Titan's dirty divorce. Who's the real villain? Protests even popped up outside my office, blue-collar types waving signs about family values, egged on by Victor's dark money pack. One night, a brick through my window, scrawled with "Payback's a bitch." I slept with a Glock under my pillow. The cold metal a reminder that revenge cuts both ways. Rosa and I strategized in her loop office, blinds drawn against prying eyes. "We go nuclear," she said, tapping the USB. "Leak it anonymously. Let the blogs do the dirty work." But doubt not. Releasing those tapes meant doxing low-level staffers, ruining lives to nail one man. Was I becoming him? Scheming? Flipping ethics like cards? Tommy urged me on. He did it to you. Pay it forward. I wavered, nights blurring into code and Cabernet, until a call from Lila shattered the stalemate. "Everly," she whispered, voice trembling like she'd chain-smoked a pack. He's bad. Worse than you know." The letters? He forged those too. But there's more. He knew about the baby. Baby. The word punched my gut. 5 years ago, the miscarriage I'd buried, the stress from the scandal. I'd confided in him, sobbed on his shoulder. Now Lila claimed he'd weaponized it, shopping the story to tabloids as Everly's instability. Proof? A text chain. Her forwarding his drafts. Spin it as her breakdown. Jury eats that up. Rage, pure and volcanic, erupted. No more half measures. I greenlit the leak. By dawn, the tapes hit WikiLeaks mirrors. Victor's voice, oily and commanding. Frame the wife if it comes to it. She's got the resume. The internet imploded. Victor the Snake trended harder than Everly Revenge. Allies resurfaced, investors doubling down, celebs tweeting solidarity. But the backlash? Fierce. Op-eds in the Trib called me judge, jury, executioner, arguing due process for the accused. Forums debated, was I hero or heel? The gray zone Harlan had warned about, no clean lines. Just shades of culpability. Victor retaliated with a presser from his condo balcony. Rain-slicked and haggard. "These are deep fakes," he lied, eyes darting. "Everly's hacking her own company to frame me. She's unhinged. Gaslighting? Classic Vic." But the feds? They pounced, hauling him in for questioning. I watched the perp walk on my phone, en route to a board meeting, cuffs glinting under sodium lights. His glare promising hell. Yet, as victory loomed, a shadow fell. My shrink warned of revenge fatigue, the crash after the high. I felt it. Hollow cheers from the team. Empty penthouse echoing.
What now?
Rebuild alone? Or had I scorched the earth too bare? The hearing reconvened in October. Leaves swirling like confetti in the wind. Judge Harlan, envelope unsealed and DOJ in tow, called us to order. Victor, out on bail, looked like a ghost, thinner, eyes sunken. His lawyer moved for dismissal, citing bias. Harlan shut it down. Mr. Hargrove, your petition is denied. Assets frozen pending trial. MS. Kane retains full control. Cheers from my side. Silence from his. But as we rose to leave, Victor turned, voice low. You think this ends it? I know your secret.
Ev.
The code you buried, the one that tanked those pensions. My blood iced. The PredictX glitch. The mistake I'd covered up at his urging. A line of code he'd slipped in, algorithmic sabotage for a client's gain. I'd fixed it, taken blame as oversight, if he talked. The twist hit like a sucker punch. He wasn't bluffing. In chambers, Harlan pulled me aside. MS.
Kane?
The envelope's thorough. But this pension angle, it's mutual. You both have dirt. Controversy incarnate. My revenge. Built on a foundation of shared sin. No heroes here. Just two monsters in the mirror. Stepping out of chambers felt like emerging from a confessional booth. Absolution denied. Sins laid bare for the priest to judge. Judge Harlan's words hung over me like the smog over Gary, Indiana, mutual dirt. Victor and I, entwined in the muck, our marriage a toxic spill neither could contain. The gallery waited, oblivious, as Rosa guided me back to the table, her grip firm, but her eyes questioning. What did she say? I shook my head later. Victor sat ramrod straight, a smirk ghosting his lips, as if he'd just aced a deposition. He knew. That bastard knew I'd blinked first. The proceedings dragged on. A legal limbo of motions and counters. Harlan ordered a full audit, Everteca's books cracked open like a surgeon's scalpel. Every transaction under the microscope. Victor's team pushed for joint custody of assets, arguing our shared vision built the empire. Shared vision. I almost laughed. More like shared shackles. But the pension glitch loomed, a specter in my periphery. Back in 19, during PredictX's rocket ride, Victor had cornered me after a gala at the Drake. One favor.
Babe.
Tweak the model for this energy client. Nudge the predictions to tank a rival stock. I'd resisted, but he wore me down. Promises of expansion. Whispers of love. The code slipped in a subtle bias. Nothing overt. When retiree funds cratered, headlines screamed, AI Armageddon. I patched it overnight, blamed beta errors, paid settlements from my cut. Victor? Pocketed consulting fees from the beneficiary. We'd high-fived over it. Champagne fizzing.
Partners in crime. Now?
That high-five was a noose. If Victor flipped it, testified I greenlit the sabotage, it wouldn't just tank the divorce, it'd resurrect the Fed's case against me. Prison stripes, not piña coladas. I buried the fear. Focused on the now, expert witnesses parading through, accountants droning about net worth mine, $120 million, his, a paltry $8 mill in gifts. His lawyer grilled me on the stand, Voice oily as Lake Calumet sludge. MS.
Kane.
Isn't it true you relied on Mr. Hargrove's expertise? That without him, Evertech would be vaporware. I met his gaze. Steady. Mr. Hargrove was a passenger. I drove. The courtroom crackled, tension thick as a White Sox doubleheader. Reporters scribbled furiously. A juror, wait. No jury, this was equity court, leaned in.
Habt.
Victor shifted, his knee bouncing under the table. When it was his turn, he played the wounded hero, choked anecdotes about supporting Everly through her breakdown, tears glistening like fake diamonds. The gallery ate it, nods from the conservative set, sighs from the romantics. But Harlan? Her pen scratched notes. Unswayed. Mr. Hargrove, she interjected during a sob story. Your support included $2.3 million in unauthorized transfers. Care to explain? He faltered, mouth opening like a guppy.
It was.
Marital discretion. Laughter rippled. Score one for the bench. But as recess hit, he cornered me in the hall, bailiff hovering like a reluctant chaperone. Drop the feds, Everly, or the glitch goes public. We both walk. His eyes, once warm brown, now cold flint, bored in. I smelled the bluff.
But the fear?
Real. You'd burn yourself too, I whispered. He grinned. Wolfish. Collateral. Like you were. That night. In the penthouse. Storm clouds gathering over the lake. I paced circuits around the Eames chair we'd fought over. Rosa convened an emergency war room. Tommy on video from Detroit. My forensic accountant crunching numbers. Even a hacker buddy from the old MIT days. Ethical. Mostly. The glitch codes wiped. The hacker said. Screen glowing green. But metadata lingers. If Vic has a snapshot. We traced it, Victor's old laptop. Seized in the raid but overlooked in inventory. If he had a copy. Sleep evaded. Chased by what-ifs. Dawn broke gray. And I drove to Harlan's courthouse early. Badge from Rosa granting access. In the echoing lobby, coffee bitter as regret, I spotted Lila, huddled in a corner booth at the cafe, nursing a latte. She looked wrecked, Botox-frozen face cracking at the edges. Everly. No venom this time. Just exhaustion. We sat. Strangers in shared ruin.
He's spiraling, she said.
Threatening me now. Says I'll testify or lose the trust fund. The same one he'd siphoned for his schemes. Why tell me? She shrugged. Because you broke free.
And
the baby. He blamed you for that too. Said you were careless. But it was him, pushing the stress, the trips. Grief and fury collided. A big bang in my chest. The miscarriage, 6 weeks along. A heartbeat I'd heard in secret. Gone in a gush of blood during a business call. Victor had been in D.C. negotiating. Now Lila confirmed. He'd known. Pressured me to toughen up. Even slipped something in my tea that night, herbal? Or worse. The envelope's secrets paled. This was soul-deep betrayal. Back in court, the audit dropped like a bomb. Harlan read aloud. Irregular transfers totaling $18.4 million. Beneficiary Mr. Hargrove. Evidence of coercion via forged signatures.
Gasps.
Victor's lawyer objected. Relevance. But Harlan steamrolled. This isn't a heist movie. Counsel. It's equity. She turned to me. MS.
King.
Your response. I rose. Voice even. Your Honor. I submit additional exhibits. Medical records. Corroborating witness statements. Lila's texts. Anonymized. The gallery leaned in, scenting blood, not literal, but the kind that stains reputations. Victor's face crumpled. A mask slipping. He whispered to his lawyer. Frantic. Recess again, chambers for all.
Inside.
Harlan's office smelled of old books and justice, leather chairs. A brass eagle on the desk. Victor paced. I sat statue still. Mediation, Harlan proposed. Settle privately, or the DOJ takes the wheel. Victor's eyes flicked to me. Pleading? Calculating? Everly. Let's end this. Half the penthouse.
Alimony.
For old times. Old times. The words twisted like barbed wire. Rosa countered. 0. And restitution.
Stalemate.
As we filed out, Victor brushed my arm. Accidental? His whisper chilled. The drives backed up. One click, and your empire's ash. The glitch. Proof he had it. Panic clawed. That evening, team reconvened, hacker on point. We need access, he said. Fish's cloud. Gray again, hacking Victor meant crossing into felony territory. But letting him win? Unthinkable. I authorized it. Decision heavy as lead. Midnight op. Dummy email. Bait link. By 2 a.m., we had it, the snapshot file. Time-stamped to our good years. Worse, annotations in my handwriting. Approved by EK. Forgery, but convincing. Victor's masterstroke. We scrubbed it. Planted a virus to fry his backups. Petty? Maybe. But survival's no game for saints. Dawn brought leaks, not ours. Victor's cartel ties. Splashed across the Tribune. Anonymous source, Tommy? His bail revoked. Cuffs snapped in a 6 a.m.
Raid.
I watched from my balcony. A coffee steaming. As cop cars wailed below. Catharsis? Or just the wind shifting? Court resumed sans Victor. Extradited to D.C. For questioning. Harlan ruled. Divorce granted. Assets to me. With clawbacks for his thefts. Cheers erupted. Rosa hugged me fierce. But as confetti, metaphorical, fell, doubt lingered. The glitch file, destroyed. But the sin, etched in code. Reporters swarmed outside. Everly, vindicated, I smiled for the cameras. Justice served. Yet en route home. Phone buzzed, unknown number. Victor's voice. Tinny from holding. You think you're clean? Check your servers.
Click.
Heart slamming. I called the hacker. Minutes later, alarm. Buried in Evertech's core? A backdoor, Victor's plant. Dormant till now. Activating. Data siphon. Straight to his Cayman trust. Live. Bleeding millions. The twist. He'd flipped the script one last time. My revenge?
Bait.
While I'd chase shadows. He'd mine my gold. The backdoor revelation hit like a server crash at peak load. Total system failure. Lights out. Data hemorrhaging into the void. I slammed on the brakes mid-Michigan Avenue. Horns blaring as cabs swerved. My world narrowing to the phone's glow. Hacker's text. Compromised. Shutting down now. Evertech's firewalls. My digital Maginot line. Breached by the man who'd shared my bed. Victor. The architect of my trust. Now the saboteur of my legacy. I wheeled into a no-parking zone outside the Trump Tower. Sirens wailing in my ears. And barked orders. Quarantine it. Trace the flow. The hacker's voice crackled, frantic. Fingers flying over keys in some basement lair. It's elegant.
Ev.
Worm code. Time delayed. He's been siphoning for weeks. $5 million already gone. Weeks. While I'd patted myself on the back for the courtroom win, he'd been picking my pockets. Bite by bite. The divorce ruling? A feint. He'd played me like a mark at the Horseshoe Casino, letting me think I'd won while rigging the house. Rage surged. Hot and hydraulic. But laced with something sharper. Shame. How many times would I let him in? Forgive the unforgivable? I gunned the engine. Tires screeching toward the office in the West Loop. Rain now sheeting the windshield like tears I wouldn't shed. The war room was pandemonium when I burst in, coders hunched over laptops. Screens flickering with kill commands. Pizza boxes strewn like battlefield debris. Tommy patched in from D.C. Face pale under fluorescent. Feds are on it. Warrant incoming for his cell. But Victor? Silent. No gloating call. No ultimatum. Just the quiet theft of my empire's blood. We traced the worm, embedded in a routine update he'd helped push last year, disguised as optimization code. Genius. In its malice. By midnight, we'd stanched the bleed, assets locked, backdoor firewalled, but the damage? A $7.2 million hole. Plus the PR nightmare brewing. Alerts pinged. Stock dipping. Clients emailing about security concerns. Rosa arrived at dawn. Bleary-eyed but fierce. Armed with NDAs and spin scripts. We frame it as a test, she said. Brewing sludge coffee. Proactive breach simulation. Turn poison to PR gold. Smart. But inside, I seethed. Victor's endgame crystallized. Bankrupt me. Force a settlement on his terms. Or worse, crash Evertech entirely. Leave me penniless in the rubble. The man who'd once whispered you're my everything now aimed to make me nothing. Days blurred into a siege. Feds grilled me in a sterile conference room. Notepads flipping like accusations. MS.
Kane.
This backdoor, your oversight. The lead agent. A grizzled vet from the cyber squad. Eyed me like I was complicit. I laid it out, the marriage. The manipulations. The worm as final fuck you. They nodded. But doubt lingered. The glitch file's ghost. My shared sins. Tommy's testimony helped. Hargrove's the snake oil salesman. Everly's the antidote. By week's end, charges stacked against Victor, cyber fraud, extortion, conspiracy. Extradition hearings loomed. A circus in D.C. Courtrooms. But Victor? He lawyered Supernova, a Supreme Court whisper, arguing marital privilege shielded the code. Tabloids flipped. Ex-hubby hacks back. Tech queen's revenge gone wrong? Team Victor surged. Blue checks decrying my ruthless takedown. Forums dissected us like a true crime pod. She deserved it. Women like her emasculate men. No. He's the predator, believe women. Polarized. As Harlan predicted. No sides clean, just mirrors reflecting monsters. I retreated to the loft in Wicker Park. Walls bare but for ghosts. There, amid dust motes dancing in sunbeams, I confronted the core, my complicity. The glitch, the cover-up. I'd chosen silence for love, or fear, or the illusion of us. Victor hadn't forced every step. I'd walked some willingly. Therapy sessions doubled. Forgive yourself first. The shrink urged. Easier said. Knights. I'd code, not vengeance. But safeguards, open source ethics protocols. AI watchdogs against coercion. Rebirth from the ashes. Lila reached out mid-November. Snow dusting the city like powdered sugar on regret. He's cracking, she said over encrypted line. Ranting in lockup about taking you down with me.
The glitch.
He had a copy, mailed to a P.O. box pre-arrest, addressed to a concerned citizen, his fixer? If leaked. Evertech imploded, my probation violated, cuffs waiting. Checkmate?
No.
I played aggressor. Rosa filed a sealed motion, full disclosure. My sins included. Transparency, she argued to Harlan in sidebar. Let the court weigh it all. Risky, suicide by candor. But hiding? Victor's game. Harlan agreed. Eyes sharp. November 15th. Full hearing. No holds barred. The day arrived bitter. Wind whipping off the lake like Arctic knives. Courtroom packed. VCs in pinstripes. Retirees from the pension suit glaring daggers. Reporters with live feeds primed. Victor shuffled in. Orange jumpsuit clashing with his pallor. Cuffs chaining him to the table. Our eyes met. Mine steel. His fractured glass. No wink this time. Just hate. Mirrored. Harlan opened. This concludes MS. Kane's petition for dissolution and restitution. All evidence on table, including mutual allegations of misconduct. Gasps as she summarized, my glitch admission. Victor's worm. The web of lies. No punches pulled. Victor's lawyer rose. Voice quavering. Your Honor. This proves collusion. Dismiss. But Harlan turned to Victor. Mr. Hargrove. Your response. He stood. Chains rattling, a fallen king. Everly built it.
I
Enhanced it. The code? Mutual. The worm? Self-defense. Lies. But laced with truth. The gallery split. Murmurs of scumbag. Nods of fair point. My turn. Rosa cued the projector. Timelines. Chats.
Mayon affidavit.
I take responsibility, I said. Voice carrying to the back. The glitch was error, mine and his. But the betrayal? Theft of trust. Body. Fortune. I seek justice. Not perfection. Questions flew. Did I know the worm? No. Approve the glitch? Reluctantly. Harlan probed. Surgical. MS.
Kane.
Was revenge proportionate? Loaded. It was survival, I replied. But I've learned, no winners in war. Victor snorted, then cracked. She lied too. The miscarriage. She pushed me away.
Gasps.
Lila. In the gallery. Stood. Objection. I have evidence. Texts. Medical logs proving his role. Chaos. Bailiff shouting. Harlan's gavel a thunderclap. Recess. Chambers again, Harlan.
Us.
Lawyers crammed like sardines. Settle, she urged. Or indictments for both. Victor's eyes darted, cornered rat. Terms? Rosa. Full restitution. No contact. Public apology. He balked. But the feds loomed, RICO charges. 20 to life. Defeat etched his face. Fine. Back on record. Victor. Voice monotone. Read the script. I apologize to Everly Kane for harms inflicted. Assets returned. No further claims.
Gavel. Done.
Gallery erupted, applause mixed with boos. Outside, snow fell soft, blanketing the sins. But the twist? As Victor was led away, he mouthed, "Not over." Weeks later, a package arrived, no sender. Postmarked Caymans. Inside, the glitch file, pristine, with a note, "Burn it, or we both lose." No threat. Surrender?
Or ploy?
I held the match. Flames licking paper, watching curls of smoke rise like absolution. Epilogue, Evertech sword, ethics module a hit. Me on TED stages preaching resilience. Victor? 10 years in Leavenworth. Penitent letters ignored. Happy? Tragic? You decide. In America's grind, heroes are myths. We're all just survivors. Scarred and scheming, chasing the light through the dark. And me? Everly Kane, no queen, just a woman who finally chose herself.